Support for Carolina Business Review provided by Grant Thornton. Operating in more than 100 countries, our tax, audit, and advisory professionals specialize in helping companies unlock their growth potential. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of South Carolina, where healthcare is changing for the better. Find out how at ahealthysc.tv. And by Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services, with more than 300 operations in 35 countries.
A relatively new jobless number shows pretty much what we already knew, but always like to have confirmed: dropping unemployment in the Carolinas. That is a good thing. Welcome once again, and thanks for supporting the most widely watched program on Carolina business and public policy. I'm Chris William, and really the issue is not about the measurement of the unemployed, but rather the generating of new jobs and growing underutilized industry sectors. We could also call it workforce development, but then again, that's only part of the story. We begin this discussion on the most important policy and business issues of the day, and in a moment, from the Carolinas' premier community and technical college, Dr. Tony Zeiss of CPCC.
Major funding also by Novant Health, bringing you world-class technology, clinicians, and care when and where you need it. The Duke Endowment, a private foundation enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. And by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina. Who's responsible for rising healthcare costs? Join us and many others in a candid discussion at letstalkcost.com. This edition of Carolina Business Review was recorded January 30th, 2015. On this week's program, Gene Davis, CEO of MCNC, Grady Johnson, president of SC Biz News, and special guest, Dr. Tony Zeiss, president of Central Piedmont Community College. Now, here's Chris William.
Hello, welcome to our program. Good to have you both here. Thank you. It's not too late to say Happy New Year. I've been saying that now for a while. Gene, welcome to the program. Good to have you here, and Grady as well. But Gene, congratulations on the new job, going from North Carolina Commerce to MCNC. I think it's a big win for MCNC, and you get to keep your great leadership in the state. Let me start with something. You know, Google made this huge announcement a couple weeks ago that they were going to Raleigh and Charlotte, and they were two cities in the nation. How much does that affect not just what you do, but how much does that affect the broadband and the internet connectivity between rural and urban? And is it a marquee announcement, or is there more to this?
Yeah, no, it was really a welcome announcement. I think that for the cities, it's been an amazing thing to understand all the capabilities that gig fiber will bring to those cities. I think that we have a number of carriers in North Carolina that are also building out their gig network, and so the more in the market certainly is going to drive down the price, increase the connectivity. And so the next thing we've got to be thinking about is how we go beyond those cities and get more folks connected, so they can really harness the potential of high-speed fiber. Mm-hmm.
Internet connectivity, high tech, one of the things that Mayor Riley did his 39th State of the City address recently. 39th. He's been in office since 1975. That's unbelievable. And one of the items that he put a stake in the ground, Grady, as you well know, was this whole Silicon Harbor idea of what Charleston has done with high tech and internet connectivity. Are we going to see greater things over the next decade, even though the mayor is leaving office? Is there a lot of momentum around that?
There's a tremendous amount of momentum. Charleston is unbelievable. The Upper Peninsula now is transformed in ways that no one could ever have imagined, and it's happened so rapidly compared to the changes that have occurred on the Lower Peninsula of Charleston. The energy that these entrepreneurs, young folks mostly, who are coming into the city, and this is that new urbanism thing that Richard Florida had been talking about for years. It is happening in Charleston right now. So I think it'll just explode. They may regret sort of the name Silicon Harbor because it's going to go well beyond the peninsula. So that may not be, but it's unbelievable.
All these things underpin economic development. Gene, you came for many years, almost 2 decades, at North Carolina's Department of Commerce around economic development. A lot of folks saying that South Carolina is at the top of their game for economic development. North Carolina's taken some real hits over the last couple of years. Is South Carolina doing that much better than North Carolina? And is North Carolina finding its sea legs, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, South Carolina has been incredibly active. Their governor and their Secretary of Commerce have been really beaten down the doors and have a really well-honed machine. And so I think that North Carolina is moving into a really good place right now with the arrival of Chris Chung at the Economic Development Partnership. I really think that momentum is going to start moving us forward, get some things settled down, let people know North Carolina is open for business, and hopefully keep up that competitive spirit against South Carolina that we've always had.
Yeah, and Nikki Haley in South Carolina, Governor Haley of South Carolina, has turned into quite a soldier around economic development. Many say her secret weapon is Bobby Hitt. Nikki Haley's State of the State speech recently talked about transportation as being one of the big things. I want to ask you both about transportation. Transportation in South Carolina, even Speaker Lucas, newly minted Speaker of the House Lucas, said transportation is an issue, but we're probably not going to get to it this session. Haley said in her State of the State that transportation was big and she's willing to raise the gas tax. How much you think that's going to happen? How much funding you think transportation is going to get in 2015? I think
they're going to spend 2015 fighting about it. I will be pleasantly surprised and delighted if some major things happen. I think it's going to take another year of posturing, fighting. The fact that Governor Haley has raised the idea, brought the idea forward of raising the gas tax, I think is a positive thing. I think the business community fairly united in support of raising the gas tax and fixing and making a deal. But it's very difficult on the political side of things to raise taxes. You might as well legalize some crime. It's just so it's very difficult, and so I think they're going to have to chew it up. But I think the State Chamber of Commerce and others organized business entities are going to continue to push because it needs to be fixed. And it needs to be fixed now. Yeah,
and same thing in North Carolina. I get, Gene. Is there a creative way that we're not thinking about funding transportation that maybe we ought to be?
Yeah, certainly. I think that just like in South Carolina, we're going to have a lot of machinations because the current mood of not wanting to raise taxes, yet the inflow of people and the needs from our ports and our roads and our bridges is great, and so we're going to have to be creative at finding some solutions.
Do you think we can be creative? Do you think there is enough open-mindedness in North Carolina to look at this differently, maybe vis-a-vis toll roads, maybe a different strategy around issuing bonds? Is there a willingness and an appetite to do that?
I've certainly heard plenty of good conversation happening in Raleigh around this, and I think there are some open minds around solutions that could get us there. I think there's lots of great national best practices that they've been looking at, and I'm hoping that will lead us in a good direction to manage that well.
Yeah. Okay, guys, thank you. We're going to bring our guest on just a second here. Next week on our program, so much we talk about charities and we think about it as being a goodwill place to write our checks and feel good. Philanthropy goes right to the society and the social fabric of what we do around human services. Next week on this program, we have 4 from philanthropy. Jay Everett, Madeline McGee, Karen McNeil-Miller, and Gene Cochran will be here. And then in 2 weeks, he is the CEO of Novant Health. His name is Carl Armato, and Carl will be here talking about all things healthcare, which we know 2015 is going to be an interesting year for healthcare as well. For almost a quarter of a century now, our guest has led this North Carolina Community College through some pretty stunning growth. It now has over 100 degree, diploma, or certificate programs, continuing education opportunities, and more than 70,000 people on 6 full-time campuses. One of the largest such schools in North Carolina and in South Carolina. But more than that, the Workforce Development Initiative seems to be close to its beating heart. Or maybe I should say his beating heart. Joining us now is Central Piedmont Community College President, Dr. Tony Zeiss. Tony, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Good to have you here. Let's start with an easy question. President Obama recently came out, Tony, and said that we need to compel or make available 2-year degrees through this thing called the America's College Promise. How does this proposal from the White House change the way that you strategically plan and fund? What does that mean? And do you think this is a good idea?
I'll go in the reverse. Basically, I think it is a good idea. There are very few job options for people who finish high school. They have to have 2 years of training minimum, and certainly college and training to get a career. And so we're at a point where it's time to move from K through 12 to K through 14. In fact, I was talking about it 25 years ago. So I'm for it, and I would be because I'm a community college person, and I want to see everybody educated so they can support themselves and support their families. The devil's in the details, though. There's a lot of questions to be asked. If it's a federal program, what sort of strings are attached? Where does the money come from? Tennessee just put in a similar program, free tuition for everyone in Tennessee, and they had a 20% growth. So how do you handle that? So there are a lot of questions to be answered. I basically would prefer that we do it, but do it at a state level, just like we did for the high schools when we moved from basically junior high or 8th grade up to high schools many decades ago. By the way, it's not a new idea. California's been doing it for decades, Tennessee, to a lesser extent, South Carolina and Georgia. But I think it's a pretty good idea, and I'm pleased that the president brought it up and brought it to the public's attention.
Yeah, Gene?
So Tony, talking about Charlotte being such a fantastic global city and CPCC's key partnership in that. So what do you see as some of the global trends that are that you want to be part of with your students in your curriculum?
Well, of course, you can't go global unless you've got the workforce to attract the companies that are going to help you go global by exporting their products and services and so on. And so community colleges and technical colleges in South Carolina play a major role in that, because basically the last I saw through the Department of Labor statistics, somewhere around 65% of all jobs require 2-year training, more than high school, but less than a 4-year school. So we've become real important economic engines, and so workforce development is the key. Along with that is we have to help our region learn to export, our regional businesses, small and mid-sized businesses. Many of them want to export, but they don't know how. So we brought in the U.S. Department of Commerce, and they have very good training. They use our facilities, and so we partnered to do that. We've been doing it for about 4 years now, and we were named last fall the fastest growing export region in the nation. So it can be done. Now we're going to move that to other community colleges throughout the region.
Great.
Yeah, Grady?
Tony, is there a way to make the colleges more nimble and align what employers need with what the colleges are teaching? It's always a challenge and takes a while to get courses stood up, and I know all that, but there's some models out there that you guys are looking at that increases that speed?
Yes, and basically South Carolina and North Carolina are pretty much the models, because we are pretty nimble. We work with business and industry very closely, and we have advisory committees for every program, and we have to prove the need for a program before we ever do it. And that's working with employers. That's when we recruit them to be on the advisory committee to make sure that the curriculum has those competencies in it that they actually need. Going a step further, back, Gene, with your question about globalization, we also have all of our regional community colleges in North and South Carolina are putting together a comprehensive training plan for the workforce. And to do that, we're taking basically an inventory of what do we have in advanced manufacturing, what do we have in transportation and logistics. If you're going to go global, you have to be able to move things and use the intermodal facility that we have at the Charlotte Douglas Airport. And so what do we have in energy? What do we have in finance? The key areas, just as you were alluding to. And then we can take a look and say, do we have a gap as an individual college, and do we have some gaps as a region? And that hopefully will be finished by the 18th of March. And as one example, we determined, the Central Piedmont has already done this, and we determined that we had a gap in transportation and logistics and in truck driver training. We don't have it, and there's a great need for truck drivers. The average age is like 64, and they're having trouble finding truck drivers. So our board just approved a new truck driver training program and a new transportation and logistics degree program, one of the very few in the country. So that's how that works.
You know, let me ask you to clarify this a little bit more. It's obviously good for CPCC and good for the college, but I know you, and I know it's more than that for you. So help us understand, you know, in a region like Charlotte, Dr. Zeiss, that's got so many competing but also so many complementary issues, how do you get everyone around the table to say, you know, it's not sexy technology, it's not a new industrial sector, it's not some new initiative we can all really look at and say it's really cool. I mean, this is old logistics type of planning you're talking about, right? I mean, this is basic DNA that a region has to get. And I'm not even making sense. So how do you get everyone pulling in the same direction?
Well, believe it or not, Charlotte is a center for logistics. We have 2 railroads and all sorts of trucking companies, and we've got headquarters for shipping in Charlotte. And so the key is to get those folks around, because they're the ones saying, and the distribution people together, they're the ones saying, we need these people. And so that's who's going to drive our curriculum and that program. In fact, we just got a private funder who cares about globalization, gave us a grant to develop the curriculum with business and industry for that particular program. And it's getting more and more sophisticated, as you can imagine. They know where those ships are all around the world. If you ship something, they can track it and follow it all over the world.
Yeah, Gene?
So, Tony, MCNC is a statewide nonprofit that provides connectivity to places like your community college. What role do you see technology playing in helping your students do all this work you talked about and helping companies, succeed more in this globally competitive world?
Well, in fact, that's a very good question. In the urban areas, we're in good shape with high-speed internet connection, but in the rural areas, they're not so much. And businesses have to do business in the world, and to do that, they have to have high speed. So getting the broadband capabilities in rural areas is a real challenge for us, and I think I know it's something you're going to look at, and it's something the state should be looking at, because our prosperity really depends on it, and the prosperity in the rural area in particular.
Mm-hmm. Grady?
Tony, how are you thinking about providing an infrastructure for students beyond what's on your campus? Students are struggling. They need transportation to school. There's just these other areas that need a lot of help. How are you thinking about providing that infrastructure that you really don't have a lot of control over? How are you?
Yeah, well, of course we have a virtual campus. That's our online campus. But interestingly, the achievement level of students who take pure online classes is about 40% less, because not everybody's that self-disciplined and motivated. So we've turned to a hybrid or a blended approach where they might be on their own for a week, and then they'll come back and everybody has a classroom experience with the teacher, and they get to know each other, and then they do pretty well. So that's one way that we work at it. The other thing is we have 6 campuses, so we've tried to become more convenient to people. We found people were spending more time in their car than in the classroom when we only had one campus. And then we have extension centers. We use the high schools at night, and we try to reach them wherever we can and in a convenient fashion, because you're right, childcare and transportation are 2 of the biggest obstacles for people. By the way, the average age of our student is 30 now. And if you add corporate and continuing education, where we train incumbent workers, it jumps to 34. And so they have issues. They have children. But that's one reason I love these colleges. We're ubiquitous and we're open for everybody. We're open door colleges, and we want everybody to succeed.
I want to come back to something. I'm not going to keep coming back to it until we get some other answers. But There is this issue around global workforce and developing and bringing a region together to all kind of sing out of the same page of the hymnal. In Charlotte specifically, it's going to be politically unpopular as you develop a logistics network for a global workforce to say, you know, it's better for us to use the Charleston port than Wilmington. Wilmington won't like to hear that, but Charleston is probably going to be the lower cost and quicker provider in the supply logistics chain between Charlotte Douglas and the South Carolina Ports Authority. How do you bridge that political gap?
You know, knock on wood, to this point we have kept it apolitical. This is a grassroots movement. We've created the vision to become a global hub of commerce. And so no one entity owns it. It's all grassroots. And the people who will be driving it now will be a Global Vision Leaders Group. We have about 100 members right now of key leaders throughout both states. And the community college presidents are taking a huge role in driving the strategic plan. They are neutral, they're apolitical, and they're very excited about it because they are community colleges, so they support their communities. And we share curriculum, best practices with each other, but we formed a group called the Charlotte Regional Collaborative for a Global Economy. And yes, logistics is an issue, but the truth is, whatever is best, it's a free market. Whatever is best for that exporter or importer, whoever gets the best deal, whether it's this railroad or that railroad or this trucking company or this logistics center or this port. So we have relationships with Savannah, the port at Savannah. We have relationships with, of course, Jim Newsom and Charleston. We have relationships with our own Wilmington and Norfolk. And Norfolk and Charleston right now are getting the most business out of the Charlotte region.
Jane.
So there's so many fantastic companies here in the Charlotte region from all over the world. Tell us a little bit about your partnerships with business and what that's meant to the community college and how you work together with those companies.
Well, I'll give you a quick example. Thank you for that question. Several years ago, about 8, we determined that Germany was critical for our future, because if we want to become a player in the global economy, we have to export things, and that means manufacturing becomes very important. Who does manufacturing better than Germany? No one. They do the best. They have a negative growth in their population, so they are moving their plants, and they like to move them to the United States because of our relations. We determined that we should become the most German-friendly college in America, so that when they bring those manufacturing plants, they'll come to the Charlotte region. And indeed they are. And so Siemens is a great example. We now have approval from the German government to teach German certifications. The only school, they tell us, that has that approval to teach and confer. That gives a leg up for our students, and we'll share that with other people, but there are 200 German companies alone just in this region. And so the more we work with Switzerland and Austria and Germany and whatever it happens to be, wherever the region is, the country that can help us with that, then that's what we do.
Grady, let me just ask a quick one. We've got literally a minute and a half left, Tony, and I want to ask you, 23 states now allow community college to offer applied baccalaureate degrees. North Carolina is not one of them. Why would that be important, and how does that square with the UNC system and the higher ed system?
I don't know if I can do it in a minute and a half, but Chris, that's an excellent question. It's one that is going to have to be looked at, and looked at seriously. The first time, in fact, I brought it up, and I was asked to give a report on it to the House Education Innovation Committee last year, and you would have thought that, I don't know.
We have 30 seconds left.
You would have thought I set off a war, but the truth is it has to be looked at, because hospitals now, if they get a accreditation status called magnet, they have to have 80% of their nurses have to have baccalaureate degrees. Community colleges produce 56% of all the nurses. There's a problem coming, so we're going to have to look at it. Many states allow community colleges to offer applied baccalaureate degrees for that reason, so they can teach those 4-year degrees. We have another problem in sign language. We have another one in paralegal. They're all moving to bachelor's degrees, and we're the ones who teach it.
You know, we're going to have you back so you can finish that answer. That's probably not fair to ask it with just a couple seconds left, but thank you for being on the program.
Thank you.
Nice to see you. Thanks for coming up from Charleston. Good luck
pleasure.
with your new mayor, whoever it is. Going to be a tough one to follow.
It'll be a power vacuum.
And Gene, good to have you back too.
Thank you.
See ya. Next week, I'm Chris William. Have a nice weekend. Good night.
Major funding for Carolina Business Review was provided by the Duke Endowment, a private foundation enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina. Who's responsible for rising healthcare costs? Join us and many others in a candid discussion at letstalkcost.com. Grant Thornton. Operating in more than 100 countries, our tax, audit, and advisory professionals specialize in helping companies unlock their growth potential. Novant Health, bringing you world-class technology, clinicians, and care, when and where you need it. Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services, with more than 300 operations in 35 countries. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of South Carolina, where healthcare is changing for the better. Find out how at ahealthysc.tv. And by viewers like you. Thank you. Promotional consideration provided by Business North Carolina Magazine. For more information, visit carolinabusinessreview.org.